Sailing to France easily is a very attractive idea as summer approaches, and a holiday in the land of wine, frogs' legs and berets, not to mention duty-free goods, is an excellent reason for planning it. There are 4 French ports within a day's sail of the UK, and half a dozen UK departure places to make this easy daylight hours passage. At the eastern end is Dover, and to the west is Weymouth. In between are Eastbourne, Newhaven, Brighton, Yarmouth Isle of Wight or Lymington, all of which are less than 70 miles or so from a French non-tidal marina. Most boats should be able to do any of these routes between dusk and dawn during the summer, provided you're prepared to run the iron sail if the winds are light or if you're not making a good average speed. Your departure point clearly depends on where you keep your boat, so this chart should help you decide which route is best for you. But sadly, in this year of 2025, there is some paperwork you need to address before you cast off. Both the British and French authorities have created the necessity to fill out some online forms and emails. The British system requires you first to register with UK Customs Border Force, and you do this by filling out an online form like this. Having completed that, you sign in on this form, which takes you to a choice of either departing or arriving UK, and so you tick departure. This takes you to Voyage Plan. One of the questions is, when did you arrive in the UK? Now, if you live here, then I would put in a date you purchased the boat, as the question is irrelevant and is intended for foreigners. The next page is departure plans, like this, and it goes on wanting a departure port from a list. If your mooring's not on the list, then just choose a place near to you that is on the list. And basically that's it. The form is based on the form's light aircraft fill-out, and when I was talking to government officials who created this system, it was clear none of them had ever seen a small cross-channel boat in their lives, and they had no idea how approximate departure and arrival times can be, and indeed arrival places can be when messing about in boats. Before departing France, bound for the UK, you go back to the website and you tick arrivals again, putting in the nearest port or marina that's on the list. When you're 12 miles away from the UK, you should hoist your yellow quarantine flag, and when you park up in the marina or mooring, you need to call the Border Force telephone number that you've been given and report your arrival and all the details of crew or passengers. Normally, Border Force will give you clearance over the phone, but until you get this clearance or are inspected by Customs or Border Force, the only person allowed to go ashore to the marina office is the skipper. This is the list of online addresses you need to access the various UK and French documents, so you can pause it on the video. There's also a copy of this list on the video description on my YouTube channel at Sailing Gently. I'll put this list up on the screen again later and at the very end of this video. For the French part of the voyage, it's all change in 2024, as the French customs realised that the problem UK boats were having were too challenging and that marinas were just losing business. The problem stems from the fact that there are only French customs officers based in some ferry ports, not all. Dieppe, for example, only has a couple of ferries a day, so the officers come by car from somewhere else to process ferry passengers. This means that only Calais and Cherbourg have permanent customs douanes presence based there the whole time. Because there's no official presence at any of the French marinas, you could, having paid your marina fees, just walk ashore and not bother with passport control. However, any French police locale, gendarme or customs officer can stop you and ask you for your ID papers, your passport, which you are legally obliged to carry with you at all times. If there's not an entry stamp or, on scanning it, an entry permit on your passport, then you will get a very hefty fine and, in worst case, have your boat impounded. Once you're legally scanned or stamped in, you can then visit any other French or European Union port that you want without having to clear customs again. You may also remain in France and the rest of the EU for up to 90 days. Because this is a computerized system, it's vital that you also check out of your French marina or port with the customs douane. If you fail to get your passport stamped out or scanned out, then if you decide to fly or drive to any other EU country in the future, you're going to be refused entry and possibly fined, because their system will show that you are still apparently in the EU, and you are an illegal immigrant because apparently you've remained there over 90 days. Rumour has it that the French plan to install airport passport scanning machines into French marinas so that marina staff can check you in and out, but that may be a few years off. So, in order to make life easier for the British, this pre-notification form was created last year, 2024. I've heard very good reports from boats that have already used it. What it does is to notify the marina of your arrival, who, in turn, notify local customs officials and ask them to come to the marina to stamp or scan your passports. Now, there's no guarantee that an official is available to jump in a car and drive to Boulogne or Dieppe marinas, but the intention is there. The form, as you can see, is in French and English, and having filled it out, you attach it to an email and send it to the French Marina office for them to action it. It's important, if you cancel your voyage, that you inform the marina so they can cancel the official travelling to meet you. If you can't find this official French Marina form free on the internet, then there's a download on my book site at gentlesailing.com. This map shows all the French marinas operating this new entry scheme. The only paperwork French officials are interested in seeing are the ship's papers, Small Ships Register or Part 1, passports for every person on board, and that's it, except the marina will also want to see boat insurance at least third-party level. You do not need any other documentation. Nobody is interested in your ICC or any other certificates, including VAT stuff, I promise you. Here again are the contact details for the forms and the French marinas participating in the scheme. As you're coming across the channel from the UK, once you're 12 miles out from France, you should hoist a French courtesy flag with a yellow quarantine flag below it. When you've arrived, only the skipper should go ashore to the office to pay the fees and clear customs. Once your passports are stamped or scanned, you can take down the yellow flag but keep the French one flying until you leave French territorial waters, 12 miles out. OK, now on to the fun stuff. The first and shortest passages are from Dover to Calais, which is 23 miles, and from Dover to Boulogne, which is 26 to 28 miles away. As you can see, the shipping lanes occupy most of the channel and are busy, together with some serious shallows mid-channel, which can be uncomfortable in a blow. The marine traffic image I made today is quite impressive as to how busy the eastern part of the English Channel is. There is a splendid new marina in Dover with excellent facilities. As you approach the port from the channel, you're obliged to call Dover Port Control when you're 2 miles out and monitor their VHF channel 74 all the time. You may not enter or leave without permission of Dover Port Control. The marina itself operates on VHF 80. Be aware of the waiting area just outside the new marina, which you should use while waiting permission to leave or cross to the Eastern Channel. You're obliged to cross the shipping lanes at right angles, so Dover to Calais is pretty well a straight line, whilst Dover to Boulogne requires you to put in a dogleg in order to comply with the law. Calais Marina is partly tidal and you lock into the marina. There are waiting buoys outside, so this is no great hardship. It's a pleasant enough town, sadly surrounded by huge fences because of the illegal immigrant problems. It's a walk into town and the marina's a bit bleak, but the prices are very low. You should call Harbour Control, Calais Port, on VHF 12 to ask permission to enter or leave the main harbour, and then keep well to starboard. The ferries go straight ahead to their docks and you hang a right to the small boats area and call Calais Marina on VHF channel 9. Boulogne is non-tidal in the outside marina. This is my hometown. In order to conform with the rule of crossing shipping lanes at right angles, coming out of Dover you need to set course towards Cap Grinet, then once clear of the eastbound lane head south for Boulogne. There's a big outer breakwater with port and starboard entry beacons, although to the left port of the right isolated port beacon there appears to be open water. This is where the outer breakwater has collapsed and there are all sorts of underwater obstacles there that will do your keel no good at all. Once you've passed between the round tower, the isolated round tower and the starboard long breakwater wall with the windmills on it, there are shallows and drying out areas inside there, and it's important that you either watch your chart plot or stick to the chart, or just be really careful that you don't run yourself aground in there, particularly around low water. There are stacks of water there, the stacks of water depth there for you to put your fenders out and get your lines ready and all the rest of it. And when you've done that, you line yourself up on the entrance of the red and green inner breakwaters, call Port Control on Channel 12 and ask Boulogne Port Control for permission to enter. You need to do that because there can be major fishing boats and other merchant ships coming in and out, and there is of course the French traffic light system there, which is basically if you see 2 green over a white, then that is the signal that there is two-way traffic and you're allowed to go 2 ways. If you see 3 green, it means that it's one-way traffic and only you can enter. If you see other combinations, well, you need to start looking at your chart book and work out what those combinations mean. But basically call Boulogne Port Control, VHF Channel 12, and they speak English, and they will give you permission to enter, or not as the case may be, almost certainly they will. Having got in and got past their control tower, you need to speak to the marina, who will be on Channel 9, and you call Boulogne Marina, and they will allocate you a parking place in the port. You do need to follow the route in. It's a bigger area than it appears to be. There are locks. There are locks behind, which are basins, and it can be slightly confusing. But broadly speaking, if you just follow the port hand side, the left hand side of the entrance, all the way through, that will get you into the Avant Port, where there'll be fishing boats tied up on the wall on the left, and on the right there's normally the Gendarme Maritime, the lifeboat and various other boats, and there is the Avonport Marina, all of which has been very recently renewed and is in absolutely first-class condition, and is a excellent place, excellent facilities to park your boat in. The new town around the port area is full of bars and restaurants, and by the church you will find a marketplace and great places to eat, and a Carrefour City, which is a great place to stock the boat up with. It's worth walking up the hill to the old town. There's actually a free bus that you can get on and ride up there if you need to, but it's a reasonable walk up into the old town with its cobbled streets, its bars, its restaurants, its antique shops, its art shops, and my very favourite cafe bar, the Vole. When you sail out of Boulogne Marina, strictly speaking, you should contact Port Control on VHF 12 and ask their permission to leave, just as you did when you entered. And obviously, you must obey the traffic light signals. You should either have 2 green over a white or 3 green to let you out. Out of interest, in my experience throughout the whole of northern France, Port Control is on VHF 12 and the marina channels are VHF 9. I think that is standardized, but obviously you need to check in your pilot books. It was pretty lousy, rotten weather when I sailed in at the beginning of this film, and it was difficult to see the isolated port hand on entering fort, which marks the part of the outer breakwater, and this shot shows that much more clearly. The passage from Eastbourne Marina, although longer, is probably easier, except you have to wait for the tides unless Premier Marina has recently dredged the channel. Sovereign Harbour is not in the town of Eastbourne, which is a bus ride away, and it is the centrepiece of a major housing development that surrounds 4 connected basins which have ducky little opening bridges joining each one. It's important to keep inside the buoyed channel, as there's a wreck off to starboard which is awash at low water. It's even more important to keep in the middle of the somewhat winding channel, as the mud banks extend a considerable distance from the shore. When I was bringing Golden Haze home to France, Eastbourne was my jumping off point, and a fisherman coming out of the lock ahead of me, an hour after low water, radioed back to lock control, "Tell the old bloke in the yacht that if he leaves now, he'll go aground." I looked round to see who he was talking about, and then realised I was the only boat in the lock and understood the advice was for me. But to be fair, Premier have since dredged the channel, and it has depth in the centre of 1 metre below chart datum, meaning it should be navigable at any state of the tide. The lock and port control is on VHF 17, and it's worth making contact some distance out so they know you're arriving and can prepare one of the 2 locks for you. The locks are well designed, and it's easy to make fast to the floating pontoon, which has both mooring lines and cleats. They will allocate you a berth on the radio, and there's a plan of the marina at the end of the floating pontoon. It's an easy and well organised operation. Once parked up, you go to the marina office in the normal way. This is the view from the lock of the channel into Eastbourne at high water. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't take care to stay in the centre of the buoyed channel on your way in. Totally self-contained marina village with most facilities on site. There's one area given over to half a dozen restaurants, all serving generic chain eatery food. Their primary clientele are the thousands of inhabitants from the surrounding harbour blocks. Walking over this pretty bridge, which divides the basin that has mainly fishing boats in it from the big pleasure craft area, you come to the boatyard, which appears to have good facilities and a chandlery and some excellent riggers at Tate, who also look after the boats in Brighton. Leaving Eastbourne for Boulogne is straightforward, provided there's enough water in the channel out to the sea. It is of course low water again as we make our way down the channel, heading for the open sea. Having cleared the Boyd Channel approach, head out for Dungeness traffic lane marker beacon for about 27 miles, then hang a right and cross both traffic lanes and head straight into Boulogne-sur-Mer. Dieppe is the next French port on the list, and it's easy to get to from either Brighton, Newhaven or Eastbourne in daylight hours. Almost due south across the shipping lanes, which you should cross at right angles, although the traffic will be much less intense than in the Dover Straits. Only 58 miles from Eastbourne, or 64 from Newhaven or 69 from Brighton. As you approach Dieppe in your boat, I always find it very difficult to see the entrance. They're angled slightly off, sort of north-south, and they're quite narrow. The entrance is actually quite narrow. I think I don't think the ferry boat has got a lot of room when it's going in and out. One way of seeing it is there is an enormous, very clear beach to the right of the entrance. So if you can see that beach, and then you can see a sort of grey lump sticking out, or a black lump sticking out, that'll be the entrance. Because the car ferry and some very large fishing boats are going in and out of this relatively narrow entrance, it's important that you call Dieppe Port Control on VHF channel 12. And you will also see that there are traffic lights up on the entry pier, and the traffic lights, if you can see two green over a white, you're clear to go in. If you can see, that means there'll be two-way traffic. There'll be stuff coming out and stuff going in, but small stuff like you or me. If you see 3 green, then that means that it's one-way traffic and we are clear to go in. And green. You immediately get into a large basin where off to the left is the car ferry terminal, where the car ferry parks, and generally speaking, if I'm single-handing, that's where I sort of heave to, and I use that area to get my fenders out and put my lines out ready, and continue up the relatively narrow channel towards the metal bridge. You can be getting your lines and stuff out there. As you're going up there, you need to call Dieppe Marina on VHF 9 and ask them for a place. They also speak perfect English, and they will almost certainly allocate you a place on pontoons 9 and 10, which are the first 2 pontoons area after the tugboat. Just before the tugboat, there is a relatively narrow entrance into an area where the new fuel berth is. It looks awkward and it looks challenging, but in fact there's no tidal currents, no strong tidal currents running around there, and it's incredibly well sheltered. So getting up alongside that fuel berth is pretty easy. It's not really a problem, nor coming up as a problem. You can reverse out, you can go astern. It's pretty good. Go across the little roundabout and start walking up. Most of it's pedestrianised, stacks of shops, stacks of facilities. Really nice little place to do a bit of local shopping. But most importantly, a reasonable way up on the left-hand side is a Carrefour City mini supermarket, and you can get absolutely everything there for stacking up the boat, and it's quite a reasonable walk with your loaded bags from there back to the boat. Dieppe is a great place to visit, with excellent seafood restaurants alongside the port and a delightful town with modern shops. A really good French experience. Really is the jumping off place for the French canals. If you want to do a fairly easy channel crossing and get close to the French canals entrance, then going to Dieppe is the way to do it. If you sail across from Eastbourne, Newhaven into Dieppe, take a breath. You can go round to Saint-Valery-sur-Somme in a day, because you can work the tide. It's very important to get the tide right to go into Saint-Valery. With that route, as you'll see from my book French Canal Routes to the Mediterranean and the video about it, it takes you through all the Somme battlefields rather than Paris. So alternatively, you come out of Dieppe, probably pop round to Fécamp, because that's just 30 miles and it's a pleasant day sail, and Fécamp's a nice place to visit as well. From Fécamp, it's another 30 miles round to Le Havre, which is a huge, great marina where you can stop, take a breath, possibly take your mast down, or better still, get the tide up the River Seine to Rouen and take your mast down there, and then set off for the wonderful, relaxing, enjoyable, picturesque trip through the canals of France and the rivers of France down to the Mediterranean. Brighton Marina is a good place to leave from for the 70-mile passage if you can get away just before dawn, and that should ensure your arrival in Dieppe before dark. But being in the centre of town, the marina is very well lit. This is a purpose-built marina which majors in liveaboards who have jobs locally and houseboats. There are purpose-built little floating sheds, a massive motorboats that will probably leave a marina, and above the jetties, row upon row of little apartments. It actually has far less boat facilities than Eastbourne, and in many ways is less welcoming. For example, the little yacht club beside the security gate welcomes visiting yacht boat crews by charging them 20% more than members. Extraordinary. The only yacht club in the world to do this, I'm told. There is a mass of restaurants and cafes along the boardwalk with famous names displayed, and almost all owned by the same catering company that supplies them with ready packaged food. The area is very popular with residents of the huge housing estate up on the hillside, and of course the out-of-town Asda supermarket with its vast car park brings in lots and lots of visitors. The marina is not in Brighton, and it doesn't have the wonderful cosmopolitan air of that vibrant town. The better restaurants are at the back of the marina next to Asda, around Marina Square, which is beside a small inner basin with chandlers and excellent yacht brokers. There's a boatyard at the end with all the trades available and an excellent upholstery shop. Brighton Marina has superb heads, showers, toilet facilities, second only to Bewley. Each cabin has a shower, basin, WC and chair to sit on, proper individual bathrooms. It's almost worth coming to Brighton Marina just to see how it should be done. Dawn breaking. Heading out from Brighton Marina is delightful. It's simple, as it's an easy marina to navigate around. Like its sister marina at Eastbourne, There are sometimes issues with there being enough water at the entrance, so it's worth checking with the marina office to find out when it was last dredged, particularly if you're leaving around low water springs. Pass the outer breakwater and set a compass course of 139 degrees for Dieppe. And finally, there is the classic French marina port of Cherbourg that's visited by hundreds, possibly thousands, of English boat crews every year. Cherbourg, for those of us on the south coast around the Solent area, is the easiest port to get to. You just go down to the Needles, hang a left, steer 183, and 10 or 11 hours later, depending on your speed over the water, you'll be in Cherbourg. No tides against you, nothing to slow you down, you just go straight across. There is this enormous port, huge port with a vast isolated breakwater in the middle, and an eastern entrance and a western entrance, and frankly you really can't miss it. You're going to find it. Cherbourg Marina is set some distance inside the port. It has places for 1,600 boats in the main marina, and there are a couple of other basins as well where local boats park up. Cherbourg has the best Wi-Fi I've ever encountered anywhere, and all the staff speak English. And certainly in terms of facilities, I mean, there are dozens of chandleries, there are dozens of repair places, and the marina itself is very, very well organised with excellent facilities. It is probably the most popular port there is. Like all French marinas, it has 24-hour self-service fuel with a bank card. If you should get storm-bound or have mechanical breakdown, there are frequent ferries back to England. There are 3 departure points for a day sail across, and they are Weymouth, Poole, and either Lymington or better, Yarmouth, Isle of Wight. If you try to do it from, say, the Hamble, then it's 80 miles and will involve some time at sea in the dark. I mean, it is so easy for us, Brits, to get there from the Solent. When I sailed out of UK waters, I was based in the Hamble. I used to sail down to Yarmouth, Isle of Wight, park up for the night in Yarmouth, and at dawn set off for the Needles Channel, and I would be in Cherbourg that evening. You don't want to be bucking the tide particularly, and you want to be coming down there as early in the morning as you can, because you don't really, if you're not that experienced, want to be arriving in Cherbourg in the dark. Having got to the Needles, and the Needles is, you know, it's a great sight. At that point, you set off across the channel, and it doesn't actually matter then whether the tide is flooding or ebbing going across the channel. You just go, and as I say, 10 or 11 hours later, you're going to be entering Cherbourg. If you look at an AIS diagram for the English Channel, I just downloaded one a few minutes ago, you will see that the main shipping lanes are closer to the French coast than they are to the British coast. That's because most ships are going around Ushant and they're heading that way. So for the first part of your passage, you're going to encounter very little in the way of big ships. And although this AIS chart looks desperately crowded, in fact, by the time you get towards the area where the ships are running east and running west, by the time you get there, they're pretty spread out. It's not really an issue. As you approach Cherbourg, when you get, it's somewhere around the 10-15 meter line, 20 meters, 15 meters, you're going to start encountering fishing pots. And they are one of the good reasons for not going into any French port at night if you can avoid it, because frankly you just can't see them in the dark, and very often they don't have flags on them. The last thing you want at night or even in daytime is that bit of rope that's running down to the pot at the bottom, or possibly the nets, is having it around your screw, or worse still your rudder, because it gets jammed in under there. It is really hard to get it off. It's lean over the side with a knife to cut the damn thing loose. Of the two entrances, the eastern entrance, the slightly smaller entrance, has got more fishing pots off it than the western entrance. The western entrance, I think, is used more by cruise liners and merchant ships, and cruise ships use that entrance more, and I think people tend to lay fewer pots off that entrance. But if you're coming in daylight and you keep your wits about you, the eastern entrance is fine. There's actually a red buoy off there, and if you leave that red buoy to port and go in between the red buoy and the offlying breakwater, you will avoid the pots, because when you get through, there's then stacks of time and shelter conditions to put out your fenders and get your mooring lines ready and all the rest of it, and you have to keep navigating. You need to be aware that you then need to get to the next inner breakwater, which is where it starts to get busy. You'll see cruise liners. You'll see French Navy ships. That inner breakwater is which really leads into the main sort of dockyard area. Having got to there, you then need to keep navigating till you get to the marina entrance, and that's a little bit hard to see. It's actually due south. It's actually almost straight ahead of you. There's a canal off to the left which goes up to other yacht basins, and then there's a long breakwater wall, and between the canal and the convention of the breakwater wall is the entrance into the marina. I never call port control going to Cherbourg. I just go in. I don't think there's any requirement to call port control, but I do call the marina Cherbourg Marina. It's actually called something else, but I just call it Cherbourg Marina on VHF Channel 9, and they will tell you where to go. Almost certainly they're going to tell you to go towards pontoon P. I think if you're around sort of 12, 13, 14 meters, then it's ponton Q, but ponton Q is next to ponton. They're going to send you to ponton P, and that is past the isolated waiting pontoon ahead. And you just go in there, find an empty place and tie up. As I say, ponton Q is for slightly bigger boats, but anyway, everybody speaks perfect English in Cherbourg, and they will instruct you. I guess there's half a chance they might send you to another berth in midsummer within the marina, but generally speaking, these two, P and Q, are the visitors' berths, and that's where you head for. Big place. Lots and lots of rows and rows and rows of yachts. Big. You then, having parked up, plugged in your electricity, etc., you go around to the office, which is a few minutes walk. The visitor's berth is not the closest there is to the main marina facilities area. Go down to the office with your insurance and your ship's papers and sign in. There are bars and restaurants around the place, but for my money, I really recommend the Cherbourg Yacht Club. I really do. It's the stairs outside the office that go up, and I've been going in that yacht club for decades and decades and decades and decades. It's really nice. It's really comfortable. You can go in, you can have a coffee, a beer, a glass of wine. Nice, comfortable armchairs, really friendly staff, and they have a restaurant and they serve very, very nice meals there, very good meals. And okay, having given them a plug, I will then go on to plug UShip. If you need repairs, if you need something done to your boat, if you need something fixed, there are several ateliers, there are several yard places, and they vary between not being very interested to not being very good or not being very skilled to being okay. UShip, on the other hand, which is located at the back of this lot in a little, you just need to find it, and it is absolutely superb. It is head and shoulders above all the others in the marina. They did a brilliant job on Golden Haze, fixing a problem I had with the califier, which several English yards and several French yards had totally failed to sort the problem, and UShip did it in a couple of hours. Very reasonably priced, very, very efficient. If you walk into the town, there are cafes and restaurants galore for every taste, every style. Absolutely wonderful. I always used to eat in the Café de Paris, but that was because I just loved eating fresh seafood, and they do a very, very good dish. They're not that cheap, but they are excellent. There is a big Carrefour supermarket, and you can walk there. It'll actually you walk there beside the other basins further on, and if you're walking from the visitors area, you can actually cut across the park area till you get to the road, and then follow the basins until you get to a footbridge, go across the footbridge, and there is a big sort of shopping centre place in which there is a huge Carrefour which has got absolutely everything. The walk is fine. By the time I'd done the shopping, I really didn't feel like carrying it back. So I went to the reception at Carrefour and asked them to call me a taxi, and that arrived a few minutes later, and it cost me €7 to take me back to the visitors area. And the cab guy knew exactly what the visitors area was for boats in the marina. Cherbourg itself, as a town, other than the periphery of really nice restaurants and seafood places, isn't that wonderful, isn't that spectacular, which is true of a lot of places which got beaten up during the war. There are other places to visit, and it's of course the perfect jumping off place for going to Alderney, Guernsey, Jersey. It's a great jumping off place for Saint Vast. You just go around the headland. If you're heading for the French canals, Cherbourg to, say, Ouistreham, Ouistreham into Havre, take your mast down. Coming back from Cherbourg to the Needles does take a bit more planning, and it could be worth leaving in the very, very early dawn. You do need to get to the Needles Passage with a favourable tide. You really don't at the end of 10 or 11 hours, 12 hours or whatever it is across the channel, want to be bucking that tide all the way up the channel in order to get yourself to Yarmouth or Lymington. So look at the tide tables again, which will tell you when the tide turns and how strong the tide is running in the Needles Channel to get you back up there. If you've never sailed into a foreign port, then Cherbourg is a great place to do it. It's all weather. It doesn't matter if it's blowing a hoolie. If the weather gets up like mad, you're going to get into Cherbourg, and it's a protected anchorage. It's an all-tide, all-weather port, and very hard to miss. It's huge, very hard to miss. If you're coming out of Poole Harbour or Weymouth, you'll be aware of the challenges of exiting and entering around both ports. The passage to Cherbourg is around 65 miles. So if you can average 5 knots, it'll take around 13 hours with no traffic lanes crossed, so it's a pretty easy, straightforward voyage, easier than the ones from the Solent. I can still remember how daunting it seemed the first time I crossed the Channel, 3 weeks after I purchased my first cabin boat, a 22-foot galleon. After that it got less scary as the boats got bigger, but that doesn't alter the fact that you should never trust the wet blue-green stuff and always check the weather forecasts. Nonetheless, messing about in boats and visiting foreign ports is a wonderful way to spend the summer, so I really hope you found this video helpful. There are 41 individual videos about the French and English Channel ports, as well as more detailed information about the ports visited in this film. They're under Channel Ports, which is a playlist that you can find at www.youtube.com/Sailing Gently Playlists. Anyway, fair winds. I've just totally updated and republished French Canal Routes to the Mediterranean, which is now in its 12th edition and is fully up to date with new information, charts and pictures. My library of digital sailing books is at gentlesailing.com, so you can buy them as instant downloads. There's a link to a printer who can convert them to hard copy if that's what you prefer. Recently I published Your Boat in the Sun, which proved an instant popular success. It's about where to keep your boat in the Mediterranean or the Caribbean and the costs and the logistics involved. I sold 50 copies on the very first day. The Atlantic Crossing Guide has become a bestseller, and it outsells most of the others, probably because it's arguably one of the most comprehensive guides to sailing to the Caribbean that's available. The Gentle Sailing Route to the Mediterranean is one of the most popular publications that I have. It describes how to coast hop all the way to Gibraltar without having to spend a night at sea. There are books about marinas in the Med, sailing in the Caribbean islands, as well as a book on simple navigation and even a Pacific Ocean crossing guide, and a book about just living aboard a sailing boat. Anyway, it's all at gentlesailing.com, so please do pay the site a visit and browse through my publications if you have a moment. Thanks. Fair winds.